Midsole now.
Hey cats, it's EDDBUD here with another dose of running news for you. Lifting the spirits a little bit, ushering in the new year, let's consolidate the cushion and observe the outsole. Running news coming your way. Thanks for tuning in, people. If it's your first time here, help the channel out, hit that subscribe button, but also tinkle the bell of notifications. Subscribing's free, it doesn't cost you any cash, and notifications will let you know exactly when the new videos drop. You can be one of the first, you could get the gold first comment. Some running related tidbits for you today for the cushion connoisseurs. First story, well, a new section of the running news is the recently released or soon to be released running shoes over the next couple of weeks. First up, over at Adidas, the Adizero Takumi Sen 9. It has two colorways on launch. The core black, night metallic and silver dawn would be my preference. A very subtle looking beast that really speaks to me. You also have the Pulse Mint, Lucid Fuchsia and Lucid Blue. Quite striking. At 170 Earth credits, this is going to have to be pretty striking to shift these, I think. Very close to the Takumi Sen 8 by all accounts so far. I mean, that's a good thing. It's a good shoe and all, but it's a little bit too close to my liking. Either way, it's available right now over at Adidas, exclusively for the moment. Over at Brooks Running, they've now launched the Hyperion Max shoe I recently talked about on the channel. DNA Flash midsole material, really a responsive ride there. Over at the main Brooks site, it appears they are fulfilling orders for other retailers too. We got the Blue Smurf, Cherry and Nightlife colorway for both men's and women's versions. There's a black, blazing yellow and white version for the men, and also a black, Fiesta and Bellflower version for the women. ASICS are very soon set to release that gel NIMBUS 25. Really enjoying that one. I think it drops in a couple of weeks' time, around the start of February, in a variety of different colorways, both for a wide and extra wide version too. Also set for release in February is the Nike ZOOMX Invincible Run Flyknit 3. I think that's set to drop on the 2nd of February in a variety of colours. The latest super squashy Easy Day shoe will be available on Nike.com first though, I should imagine, so keep your eyes peeled. Second story today is a new trail shoe that's been launched by Saucony. It could provide something that's missing from the rotations of the outdoor adventurers. The Endorphin Edge looks to provide that Saucony Power Run PB cushion, but with a more stable trail offering, but still with the patent Endorphin style forgiving foot feel. I think this is Saucony's race trail shoe offering. It certainly appears that way by the weight. Certainly an option for faster sessions with an Endorphin speed-like stack of 35mm in the heel. We've got a 6mm drop here too. Most interesting is the plate, which is incorporated into the shoe. I believe it's a Carbotex model, which is similar to the Adios Pro that we saw ages ago. A somewhat overlooked shoe that didn't really big up the tech that was inside the midsole. I think that plate only flexes in one direction. Interesting to see that technology crop up again in a shoe in 2023. I always thought actually that the carbon plate worked particularly well in that Adios Pro. Smooth and subtle assistance, certainly going up hills, which could be absolute gold for a trail shoe. A nice low weight here for the Saucony Endorphin Edge of around 255 grams or 9 ounces for the men's sample size. I think they'll probably bring it in just over or just under 300 grams in my UK 11. That is low for a trail shoe, I'm telling you. Many trail shoes in my size are well over 340 grams. They make for battle tanks really, rather than sort of nimble race options. There's very few nimble gazelle-like foot sheaths in my size. This shoe absolutely seems like a competitor to the forthcoming Nike Ultrafly. Though I guess this may appeal to trail runners with Saucony's perhaps slightly more nuanced trail offerings of the last few years. Forest floor designed outsoles seem to be something Nike can't quite get right. This one is out there for the eye-watering price of 200 Earth credits here in the UK in both men's and women's variants. This time you have that fantastic blue version and the pink one in both men's and women's sizes. Pink apparently is now referred to as Prospect Quartz. Who knew? Story 3. With the coming release of that ASICS Gel NIMBUS 25, I found the Japanese brand has undertaken some significant research to measure the comfort of their shoe design. This time they based it more on sort of feelings and the experiences of the runners, and it looks like all sort of non-elite runners as well. They've tried it at paces that certainly more kind of everyday amateur runner style. They compared the shoe up against 4 other models from other manufacturers over a total of 100 runners, testing over a period of 2 months. All the shoes were then disguised to get rid of any brand markings, trying to ensure there's no bias there that could affect the results of the test. The runners did 3 minutes at 6 minutes per kilometre, or about 9 minutes 40 per mile pace, then rated them on cushion across the midsole, stability and flexibility in the forefoot. Now, I'd absolutely love to know what the other 4 shoes were in this test. I don't have that information, sadly. I guess you can speculate on what they were. Maybe the Invincible Run could be like the More 4 from New Balance. I can't imagine they tested it up against something like the Adi Star or something like that. I can see why the Gel Nimbus would come out over that one. I would assume though that they based it on similar stack shoes of the time, though it's hard to tell if this is the case. So what they did find when they analysed all the results, they totted up the scores, was that actually the Gel Nimbus 25 came out on top in terms of cushion underfoot. I'd suggest it's certainly riding a line between stability and cushion. Firm, but fair. Let's not forget that the most cushioned shoe isn't always going to be the best one for running for everybody. Some people like something that's a little bit firmer, it's a little bit more consistent underfoot. How many people do you know that tried the Invincible Run and just found it far too compressive and it just caused more problems than it did fix them? You know, I like running around in this thing as a daily option, and some people find this pretty tough. I think you've got to remember your requirements for running throughout the week. If you're training for some sort of race or event, are going to be very different between like a Sunday long run at easy pace and when you're doing blazing hot reps for your 10k or something. Your requirements are vastly different. It's a fine line between like super cushioned and response. Shoes like the Takumi Sen 8 or the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, for example, seem to tread that line quite well. I've never found the Next Percent particularly compressive, like overtly unstable or anything. You want a forgiving ride, yet something that can enable you to keep pushing hard. You just don't need that propulsive feel on those easy days when you're doing some recovery miles or something. Well, at least that's what I keep telling myself week in, week out. More on the Gel Nimbus 25 when I get some more miles into it. Story 4. As a long-time football or soccer fan, I think I've probably been watching since I was about 5 or something, I've always been interested in the amount of effort that certain players put into a match. How far are they running? How fast are they running? Specific players that I just bemoan for their lack of effort and running and pressing. They just seem to saunter around and let everybody else do all the hard work. Today I set out in the running news to try and find out which footballers are doing the most work on the pitch right now. Who are those heroes in the Premier League that are running more and more and putting extra effort in? I was amazed to see that most players run an average of about 7 miles in a match, so well over a 10k. Don't forget that in the main, very few substitutions are actually made during a 90-minute game, so it's easy to see why they cover so much ground. As I started researching this though, it became very clear that specific positions on the pitch, certain players are going to run more than others. Perhaps you're at a slight disadvantage if you're a centre-back or something compared to like a midfield general. Sometimes the midfield players actually rack up over 10 miles in a game, imagine that. I also imagine the type of football and the formations used are going to probably influence things too. Most of the information I found was back in November 2022, so just before the break for the World Cup. James Ward-Prowse comes up on top, having covered 174.4 kilometres total in his 1,350 minutes of play up to that point. Spurs come up as one of the teams to have covered the most cumulative distance at that point. They have a total of 1,683 kilometres, with Leicester and Southampton just below them. Amazingly, the top 6 teams at that point, aside from Spurs, all were much lower in the table. They ranked amongst the lowest amount of distance covered by all of the teams in the Premier League. So maybe it's not how far you run, but when you run and how fast. The fastest players though in the Premier League is quite interesting reading. You've got Jack Stacey of Bournemouth, Alan St Maximin of Newcastle, along with Arsenal's Martinelli and Manchester United defender Dalot, all clocked in with the fastest sprints around 35 kilometers per hour. I'll tell you what, that is going some, isn't it? Serious speed. But there was one player that was ahead of the pack. 36.5 kilometers per hour and that's Darwin Núñez of Liverpool. I wonder what that guy could do on a park run. That is apparently about 22.68 miles per hour. That's ridiculous. Quite staggering speed. So does it translate to actually make you a better team? Perhaps not. Very interesting stuff nonetheless. If you spotted some interesting running news stories, let me know about them in the email in the description of this video. Quick musical interlude for you, and then I gotta go. I've dug back out This Notes For You by Neil Young. This is where Neil Young was producing some really interesting material around about the 80s period. I think he'd come back to the label he was on before that ill-fated sort of Geffen period, and he decided to do a sort of blues jazz type album. You know, why not? Coupe de Ville is the best track on this one. Literally just guitars, little light sprinklings of some saxophone in there. Beautiful tone on the guitar as well. Sounds like there's lots of finger played electric guitar here. It really does round off some of those notes. Of course, I like the actual title track of the album as well, This Notes For You, which is all about people selling out, selling their souls, you know, being sponsored by various different soft drink companies and beer companies. Not Neil Young though, no chance. Go and check this one out, a underrated album by Neil Young, This Notes For You. Thanks for tuning in, people. Hope you enjoyed the running news today. Help support the channel by picking up some merch.
Let's all now.
Hit that subscribe button, click the bell below for notifications. Also give this video a thumbs up, like, share it with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD, and I'll be seeing you